Welcome back to another exciting episode of Grab the Remote with Brian and Candler.
Welcome.
Here I am. Welcome. I am your host, Candler Budd, and here is my other host,
Brian Chapman. Thanks for that.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Nice dramatic pause before you said your name, but I kind of threw you off a little bit. How you doing today, sir?
Fine. How are you?
I am wonderful. And I'm here to tell you, we're going to talk about movies today. We have a wonderful guest, someone that's near and dear to my heart. But gotta pay the bills. Today's sponsor is Totino's Pizza. So Brian, I don't know how long it's been since you've had Totino's Pizza, but if you haven't, I suggest you bring it back, try it again.
Okay, thank you.
Kids.
Thank you for that. Are you getting money out of this? Because if so, I can also be a sponsor. I haven't eaten Totino's Pizza in a billion years, but I can certainly become a fan of Totino's Pizza.
Well, you're calling me out, and maybe I should have talked to you about this before we started.
There's a lot of that. Let's go ahead and talk about that. Candler, if I know anything about my good friend Candler, is that he's just going to throw something out, and I'm going to wait a minute. Could we have talked about that 5 minutes ago before we did something?
What I want to start doing is have fake sponsors until we actually start getting sponsors.
That's delightful. Listen, I'll just let you be on the cease and desist order. Your name is on the Totino's cease and desist order.
Yes, I think they would be more than happy with what I just said about them because it was delicious. It was surprising.
I think it's on everybody's mind. Are you just going to throw things out without telling me all the time? I think that's probably the nobody really cares about sponsorship. They want to know that if you're going to blindside me with information that I don't know.
I will definitely blindside you with information that you don't know. Absolutely.
Where does that come from? Can we put you on the couch for a second? Why is that happening?
It's funny that you say the couch because I've often said this about you. If the multiverse is real, there are several universes where you are a fantastic therapist. That's one of the reasons why I love you. You're a great conversationalist, and you're not a therapist, but there's something about you that makes me reach out to you.
How does that make you feel?
Makes me feel great.
That's the bad therapist joke. And the person that's near and dear to your heart is your very own brother.
Yes.
And that's delightful to be able to, and he has a special expertise.
He has a passion for films like we do. He really loves war films, which I do not as much as he does, but I do love them. I think he loves it because of its epic in scale. He's also has a real passion for history and military history.
Okay.
So he's very knowledgeable. So when we started the show, I'm like, we've got to get Brother Wesley on one of these. It looks like he's in the waiting room now.
Perfect. We want to let's bring him in and from the virtual waiting room.
Yes.
We want to talk about our movies that we like war-wise before. We want to talk about any of that, or just want to get him in here?
I think get him in here. It says he's joining.
Perfect.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's
There
Wesley Budd. How are you, my friend? Can you hear me?
I'm on.
He is on. Wesley, I must remind you, this is a family show. So if you could unbutton one more button on your
happy to.
Excellent. Is that a tattoo?
Ladies.
Is that a tattoo? Or
that's all hair. That's all vitamin D and vitamin.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Supplements.
How
are you?
Good to see you.
So my brother Wesley, something is along the way. You want to tell us about that?
My wife is 8.5 months pregnant.
Congratulations.
We're very excited.
So I have two friends of mine who were pregnant. One just gave birth. Everything went great, by the way. So
good. I'm glad to hear
that was their second. So I know that there's a lot of trepidation, even without the pandemic, just being a first-time parent. So we're with you all the way, and I know it's going to go great. So I'm
well,
really
to get my wife even more nervous, I was fake inviting people to the birthing. I had a bluegrass band scheduled and a pig picking and about 80 people invited. Of course, this was a joke, but now she knows that I'm not really going to go through with that because
that sounds like I'm starting to get more and more understanding of the Budd way.
The Budd way, yes.
I'm outnumbered. Candler, we all know what Candler has pulled, but he has this sponsorship thing now. Like he started out the show with a sponsorship, and I'm just going.
Wait, who's your sponsor?
Well, Wesley, I'm doing fake sponsors until we get real sponsors. So
little Debbie snack cakes.
Exactly. So I came in and my wonderful wife is serving Totino's pizzas for our kids. And, you know,
Those
I'm
are
like,
good.
and like you, I like the fancy margarita pizzas. I lived in New York for 10 years. I know what good pizza is. I
Yeah.
took a bite of it. It was delightful. It was
I
really
think
great.
that's just a
The
pandemic bite.
Totinos are great.
No,
I mean,
They're great.
you're. I'm sorry, you're mistaken. First of all, foremost, you can't mess up pizza usually,
That's
but
not true.
I think it's just the fact that you're very hungry and you're in the middle of a pandemic.
I respectfully disagree because I don't think it's fancy pizza. It's different. It's just different. It's like a fancy macaroni and cheese from a restaurant, and then the Kraft stuff with the powder. I mean, it's a different whatever it is, but I loved it. It was delightful. One more thing I got to pick on Wesley before we get into the movies. One thing about Wesley is even though he's smarter than me, he's in some ways more gullible than I am. And so, Brian, you know, there's some things you would say on the phone to a brother or a really good guy friend that you wouldn't say to anyone else, correct? I mean, we've all done that. This has happened, I think, maybe 6 or 7 times. Wesley has called me to tell me something personal. Dude, you're on speakerphone. And what? He will freak out.
All right, wait a minute. I have something for this.
Okay.
So this is a phenomenon, and I think that it mostly happens with, I think, older people maybe. So you'll be talking to, I mean, I've had this with parents or my wife's parents, where there is some sensitive information and everybody's listening. It's just, I mean, because it's you know, we're on our, you know, you push speakerphone because you don't want to get radiation or whatever, you know.
Or pulled over if you're in the car.
What?
Or pulled over
in the car, hands free. So I am now, see, my wife's parents will have all this, you know, talking about everything. And the first thing I say if I'm talking to them is, you are on speakerphone.
Exactly.
That is the disclaimer of the millennium when it comes to anybody, because everybody's walking around and, you know, again, it's pretty obvious. Everything needs to be on speakerphone. So we've all been there.
Exactly. Wesley, we talked a little bit about what we're going to do today, war films. I thought we got to bring Wesley on for this episode.
Well, I'm honored. This is one of y'all's first episodes to be a guest. Is truly. I probably won't ever be invited back, but
no.
We'll
I already want you back. You haven't even started. I want you back.
We'll see.
So I could just come in with a little color commentary every now and then, just a little color commentary.
So Candler and I were talking about war films. I don't think it's in either of our wheelhouses in terms of favorites, but we did agree on, I think, one that I don't think you're talking about, but I'm interested in your list because I think my list is pitiful, and more so like cartoony, you know, like not the historically accurate. So I'm gonna real quickly before you get started. We talked about The Dirty Dozen, which 1967,
which I love, and I always say The Dirty Dozen.
Yeah,
because there's always
they were like ex-cons that were bound together for a behind the scenes, behind the lines Nazi mission. Yeah,
I love it. And that premise actually has been taken so many places, right? With Inglourious Bastards or even Rogue One, and that was always one that was fun for me. It was always on TBS, and I was like, Dirty Dozen is on. I'm sitting down. The cast is phenomenal. You can go through it. Lee Marvin.
And then 20 minutes of commercials.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, starting at 7:05 on the superstation.
I always felt bad for the civilian people that were just at that party, just having a good time. And there's
like
that group outside, like putting grenades in the pipes and everything.
Oh yeah, in '67 there was an uproar about the violence because they're all stuck in the bunker. They put all the grenades down there, and then of course Jim Brown, has to run. I wanted him to survive so badly. I hated it. Yeah. And and you're rooting for the Americans, even though this grisly nightmare is about to take place with grenades and gasoline.
Yeah,
love Jim Brown. Burn them all. 2 films that I love, and we're about to get to your list, Wesley. Dunkirk, Master and Commander. Wesley, would you like to go ahead and get started with your list?
Yeah, well, Dunkirk's great because of what Christopher Nolan does with
the time.
With time, which I know you're a big time travel fan. But I mean, having the times lapsed at different points and different.
Yeah, and for those who haven't seen the film, this is not really a spoiler. It's set up right at the beginning of the film. He takes part of the battle that takes place over 24 hours, right?
Correct.
And then another one that's over an hour, I think, and then the other
Right.
one that's even less, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 24 hours a week, and
Yes. I don't want to spoil it.
well, it's not. It's set up at the beginning. I don't really think it's a spoiler.
Yeah, but there's like there's the people on the boat that are going back, Winston Churchill's orders to get all the
Right.
boats to go across the English Channel. They're, that family, they're set for like a day. And then the pilot, who's the same guy that plays Bane, and what's his name? Why would you shoot a man before throwing him out of the plane? What was that guy's name?
It's I'm drawing a blank. Dadgummit.
Anyway.
He's been in everything, of course. Mad Max, Fury Road.
Yeah.
And,
The Dark. I was raised in the dark.
Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy.
Yeah. Bane.
Why don't you give us your three, and then we'll go into Master and C and the end.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have a lot of them, and
Right.
take a time. We crunched it down, but it's very hard to pick three best. But I thought these were all different, and all different time periods and different genres. So
Awesome.
Master and Commander is a great film starring Russell Crowe. It takes place during the Napoleonic Wars. It's set on their ship. It is a Navy warfare kind of cat and mouse game movie. During that time, Napoleon was, of course, ravaging Europe. Interesting thing about this movie is the historical inaccuracies that Jack Aubrey's character, who's Russell Crowe, was really based on a guy named Thomas Cochrane, who was kind of punished for being insubordinate, and he got demoted to a smaller ship in the Mediterranean, and he ended up doing a lot of these tricks that you see in the movie. And I won't spoil it, but Jack Aubrey does a lot of things to fight a ship that's way out of his class, actually twice the size of the Acheron. The Acheron's the ship they're looking for, but twice the size of the ship that he's in. And he does a bunch of things. I won't spoil it, but this guy did all those. And the Acheron, the French ship that Russell Crowe's British soldiers are fighting, is actually based off a American ship in the War of 1812 called the USS Constitution, which was way out of the British class. And so those are the two big things that they kind of took this story of a guy, a real life guy in the British Navy, and they took the ship from the Americans and made it a French ship during the Napoleonic War. So those are the two things. Fascinating. You really get to know the characters. There's of course, the doctor, him and Jack are very good friends. And
he was played by Paul Bettany, who was later in the Avengers. I would put him tied with Russell Crowe, my two favorite characters in that film. He was a real naturalist. He would go onto these islands and he discovered various species and so forth. I mean, I was ready to go back to school into science after watching that movie.
And
great
James
character.
Darcy, right? James Darcy, the actor, is also in it. Captain Pullings.
Oh, yes.
Pullings.
Yes.
So,
Pullings.
Yes.
Dear friend.
I made that connection because I'm a big the series Broadchurch, the BBC series Broadchurch, which is great. He was in the second season. I'll just leave it at that. So it's always fun to see the people that you already like in other things, and even they've gotten a little older, obviously. This is also directed by one of my favorite directors, Peter Weir. And that, of course, the one movie that you talk about with Weir is Dead Poet Society.
Oh, yeah.
Truman Show is another one. He did Mosquito Coast, which is a pretty good Harrison Ford departure. So going back to Master and Commander, but Peter Weir has always been an able director. He's not done as much lately, but those are the types of things that draw me to, you talked about Nolan earlier. Those are the things that get us to movies because we have these guys who are really rare, which it's kind of their obvious stamp on visuals and storytelling.
Sure.
And he's just one of those great guys.
Absolutely. Another thing I'd loved about Master and Commander, it was cat and mouse, but it was also about the relationship.
The relationship is the foundation for the success of the scene. There's a little
absolutely. Yeah, which
Sure.
makes it more terrifying later when the bad guys show up and so forth.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's there was an obvious class system during that time, and you can see the more educated and the more nobility that are in charge, the officers. There's one scene where the doctor is actually performing brain surgery to get a piece of shrapnel out of a guy's head, and all the other crew are looking over from the ship above down on him, and they're just all perplexed at what he's doing. And the fact that these two ships represent sovereign soil of Great Britain and France, of a much larger conflict that's going on the other side of the world.
Yeah, so much of the battle that goes on in this film is about the elements, the wind or lack of wind, the weather. This all affects what they're going through, which I think is fascinating. Things I've never thought about. Wesley, what do you think it is that I love and you really love? What do you think it is that you really love about war films in particular?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's the sacrifice that the human condition, what people have to go through during that time, whether it's for their family or for their country or for their faith or religion, what the human being is capable of during times of tremendous adversity, like Band of Brothers, which I know is on my list. That those guys, the greatest generation, we call them, we would not be sitting here on this podcast if it wasn't for them. These guys, jump out of an airplane in the middle of the night under Nazi shrapnel fire on D-Day and land it behind enemy lines. And then they're surrounded in the middle of the winter and Bastogne in the snow and losing their limbs from frostbite and getting shelled for hours and days on end. And, what keeps the human condition able to go through such horrific ordeals is one thing I love. And then about these stories, and then the just the pure epicness and the strategy involved is and usually military films also come with some extraordinary music, the ones that are done well.
Talk about that. I like to talk about composers with you guys, but
that'd be great.
That was well said, Wesley. I think everything that you kept talking about made me think of one word, which was stakes. So every movie, every piece of literature or TV show has some sort of stakes, whether it be comedy or whatever it is. But with these types of films, the stakes are so high. It's been touched. That's what I think draws me to the ones that I like, is that there is so much on the line. What's next?
What's next, brother?
So Band of Brothers was one of them. Even though it's a miniseries, Tom Hanks kind of took his momentum from Saving Private Ryan to this. It's on HBO. Who is the director of that? That's
there's a bunch of directors.
Yeah, a bunch of directors, but it's Ambrose's story. I remember,
and a bunch of a great cast. This speaks near and dear to Brian's heart because he's a huge New Kids on the Block fan. Donnie Wahlberg is in it.
Certainly.
And I'm kidding about the New Kids, or maybe I'm not. Maybe he is a big fan.
NKTOB, is that when they changed?
Yes. I really like Donnie Wahlberg. I think he's a really good actor.
He's done some great work.
Yeah,
he's done some really good work.
Yeah.
Ron Livingston, right?
Livingston from Office Space is
always been known from Office Space. He has a small role in one of my favorite Nick Cage movies, Spike Jonze movies, adaptation.
Yeah.
And the you're talking a little bit about directors. They did parse it out. They put it to different. One of the directors is Phil Alden Robinson, I believe, which directed Field of Dreams, which is to me kind of one of those iconic movies. So
and
if we're talking about,
and this was, sorry to interrupt, this was post Field of Dreams, if memory
serves.
So
right, Band of Brothers 01.
Yeah.
And so you just have a lot of, you put Hanks and Spielberg around this project, like you had talked about Saving Private Ryan, which can't not be talked about. Right. Weirdly, and again, I don't care about Oscars, but that weird year that he won Best Director for Saving Private Ryan, but Shakespeare in Love won Best Picture, which is the strangest.
It is strange.
Thing. But it does happen. Right. You're right about the riding into Band of Brothers.
Wes, how long has it been since you've seen it?
I watch it often, so
that's why you laugh.
How do you do that?
I watch it every Christmas. Yeah, my wife has actually become quite a little World War II buff. She watches all the films with me now, and she was not really interested in history until we got together, and so we watch it every Christmas around the season. but it's 10 episodes, maybe 8. And it starts at them training. It's about the 101st Airborne,
right?
The Easy Company, and actually one of my best friend's grandfather served in that outfit, so it was pretty cool watching it with him. And let's see, it starts at them training at Fort Benning, Georgia, and all the way to dropping in D-Day and going all the way to the Nazi surrender. Bastogne happened during the holiday season.
The holiday season, which is I know that it's like Die Hard. It's fun to watch during the holiday season.
Yeah, well, there's actually a true story that the Germans and the Americans sang Silent Night in their respective languages across the battlefield in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve.
My grandfather, not yours, Wesley. No, both of our grandfathers, Brian. He told me this when I was a little kid, and I will never forget it. He served in the Pacific Ocean, and there was a Christmas that he missed because they went over the international date line. So they went from the day before Christmas to the day after. I love that story, that he actually missed Christmas one year.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's good to know. The things like that, I love the personal stories, but the fact that you guys know those stories and you keep them together, not to get too sentimental here, but keeping those stories with you guys for your kids, that's what it's all about. Don't lose those. Write them down.
Absolutely. Tell me, Wes, how violent is it? Is it something you could probably not see with young kids, but maybe with
it's violent. I wouldn't say it is as violent as Saving Private Ryan, especially the D-Day scene, but it is. It's very violent. It is a war epic biopic at its best, and it's showing the realities of war. Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Viewer beware.
Do you think they glorify war, or do you think they show the horrors of war, or is it somewhere in between?
I think it's. I don't think Band of Brothers glorifies war. I think they glorify the sacrifice of the Americans that were involved during that time and their courageous deeds. I think Master and Commander has a little, glory built on Jack Aubrey.
There is. Yeah, thinking back,
standing up on the top of the mast when they're sailing and all that.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I'm watching Master Commander, and I've seen it a few times, I want to be on the ship. When I saw Band of Brothers, I didn't want to be in the field.
Yeah, but, no doubt. Yeah, that's there's a couple episodes Band of Brothers where it's like, okay, this really suck.
So let me update you guys on a technical thing. I just got a notice that said this meeting will end in 10 minutes because I'm too cheap to pay the Zoom upgrade. So
hold on a second. Can we get a sponsor now? Can we?
Yes, sponsored by Totino's.
I love this. Does everybody have the countdown? I love that we have an 8:35 countdown.
Oh, I don't see it.
Mine's 8 minutes and 35 seconds to talk about the movie Patton.
Okay, so we'll
really not enough time, but we'll do it. Patton, one of my favorites. It's another World War II film. The film is great to me because it kind of shows the life of one of our most important military figures in American history. He believed in reincarnation. He was big into glory and getting into the fight, and he believed that it was his destiny to be there. He believed that he fought in the Punic Wars and with the Romans, and he believed that he fought with Napoleon. He was very tough on his soldiers. There's actually a big part of his story is that he slaps a soldier for being for cowardice, and the young man was going through shell shock, and he gets punished for that and kind of taken out of the forefront, and they use him as a decoy to the Nazis for landing on D-Day. And so he was in the North African theater, Italy, goes through Italy, and then he takes the Third Army into up through France into Germany to win the war and to save the 101st Airborne that were in Band of Brothers at Bastogne, even though none of them would say that they were saved by Patton. They all did it themselves. None of them will admit that Patton saved them. So classic film. And is it George Scott?
George C. Scott. He put a C in there.
George C. Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Campbell Scott's papa.
Which I bet was because he joined. I don't know this, but I bet George C. Scott joined the union, the actors union, and there was another George Scott. So he had to be George C. Scott.
Just like just like Michael Fox, same thing. Put a J in there because somebody else. So George C. is phenomenal in this. Obviously, he won Best Actor.
Yeah.
Didn't accept the award. Directed by Franklin Schaffner, I believe. I was already a fan of Patton, but then I go into Schaffner, and he has directed one of my favorites from the '60s, Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
The original, right? The
Heston.
He did Papillon, which is great with McQueen and Hoffman. Screenplay by
Francis Ford Coppola. Yeah.
Coppola. Yeah. So you have pre-Godfather Coppola with the screenplay credits, or at least partially. And then with George C. Scott, you may have some stories about George C. Scott in terms of what else he's been in. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that, because I place him in a few films, and it's hard for me to see him in anything else. You have any thoughts on that, Wesley?
I watched him in The Christmas Carol last.
Yes.
With my wife.
It's Scrooge.
And he was phenomenal. And the first ghost, when the first ghost comes, it scares the crap out of me. It was actually really creepy.
Tell me if I'm the only one.
Past.
Tell me if I'm the only one. I can't even picture the actual Patton. I know Patton. When I hear Patton, I think George C. Scott. I'm convinced that George C. Scott is Patton. I know he's not, but you know.
I don't picture the real one. Yeah.
It's also the American flag speech. I think that is the indelible image. And so when you see the real Patton, you're like, wait a minute. It's almost like my mind does, like, it gets, the wires go crossed, because I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at, because I'm not seeing our good friend, rest in peace, George C. He is in two movies that I love that are both horror movies. I've probably talked about them. It's not Changeling with Angelina Jolie. It's The Changeling, like 1980. If you like rated PG ghost stories that are actually pretty darn good, like that movie's awesome. And it's on YouTube. The Changeling, George C. Scott. The other one, which is William Blatty directed, is The Exorcist 3.
I love it.
Are you an Exorcist? So Exorcist 3 is one to watch, I would say. And it has one of the craziest dream sequences in the history of film in it. And I was brought there because of Patton. I'm taking it back around to Wesley, but those two movies, it was really, for me, it's like, I watched these because
I never saw The Exorcist. Never saw it.
Brought to you by Amy's Burritos.
Yeah. One last thing I'll say about Patton is he has the best nickname given to him by his troops, Old Blood and Guts.
Yeah.
That's great. And I think it's hard to believe that he died not in battle. And I think there'd been some talk about conspiracies and things like that. I think he just had a blood clot and died in the hospital, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, very sad.
American hero.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 minutes. 3 minutes to reach minimum safety.
Now I'm starting. Because I'm starting to watch the clock, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I was distracted by Wesley's chest hairs. Now I'm distracted by the clock.
I think it's great. We should always do these. We should have time on everything. It makes it so much faster and funnier.
All right, we're gonna get out of here. Wesley, thank you so much for joining us. You just added so much.
Another sponsor, the Redneck Gourmet
in downtown Noonan.
Drinking my afternoon beer out of.
Yes, come check out downtown Noonan and support our local businesses. It's just a wonderful town with great people.
Best.
Wesley, any last words of wisdom before we get out of here?
No, I'm excited for the new podcast. It's going to take off, and I'm just honored to be a part of it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Great commentary, and really we're thrilled with you with the new baby.
Thank you.
That tribute was sponsored by Quartz Watches with the remaining meeting time of 2 minutes. Candler, I was going to text you that we were going to do something.
I love it. All right, this has been Grab the Remote with Brian and Candler. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.